What does it mean to surrender? For me, surrendering is checking in with where I've been holding on to things too tightly. Where have I been trying to control things? Welcome to Building Wings Studio episode number 5. I'm Jen Russell, and today I'm going to be talking about my perspective on surrendering and what that can look like in a creative practice. So now that we're here together, let's just check in with our bodies, take a minute to pause and just breathe. I want you to start by taking a deep breath in and releasing it. Just become fully aware of your body. Sink into that. Now, starting with your toes, I want you to bring awareness to your toes and move up through your body, your legs, your arms, your fingertips, your throat, your shoulders, your head, your eyes, your ears. I want you to go through all your body parts while you're breathing and just see what is tight. Where are you holding tension? So breathe in and check in with all the little parts of yourself. Now that we've done a little body scan and you've found some spots that maybe you're holding some tension or a little tighter than maybe you would like or that you maybe didn't notice before right now, I want you to, on your next breath, breathe in, filling that space. For me, that would probably be my shoulders and my neck. So when you breathe in this time, I want you to imagine that breath swirling into that area and loosening it up. Even wiggle a little bit. And on your breath out, breathing out that tension, letting it leave your body, visualizing it flowing out. Take another breath. And breathe out. That's just a quick practice you can do to check in with your body, to see where you're holding things tightly. Sometimes we don't even realize that we're tight. I know for me, if I check in at different times of the day, I can feel that my shoulders are creeping up and up and up towards my ears. And it might not even be just any in particular situation that's causing it to happen. It's just something, a habit that I've built up over time is holding a lot of tension in my shoulders and neck. So how often in a run of a day are you checking in with your body to see where you're holding things tight? I don't do it enough. I'd like to say I do this every day, but I don't. Sometimes it's just a matter of I feel pain in my shoulder and I go, oh yeah, I've been holding on to that too long again. But if one thing that you could do is put a timer on your phone or an alarm, I guess, a reminder, and have it go off 1 or 3 times a day or more. And that way when you look at your phone, you'll see it and you'll go, okay, I need to check in. And you can do just a little bit of breath work. It doesn't even have to be anything that anybody else knows that you're doing, but it's a way for you to check in, reset, and move on with your day. So what does surrender mean to you? I know the word surrender may bring a lot of thoughts to mind of giving up or throwing in the towel and walking away, but that's not the way that I interpret surrender in this sense. For me, surrender isn't giving up or letting go or having a situation or person walk all over you or take advantage of you. It's not giving up or surrendering your sense of self or your authenticity. It's more of a way to pause, to take some time to kind of step back and gain some perspective, or you're still doing your best, you're still giving it your all, but you're not driven by the outcome. There's not just one way that it has to be, or maybe you have this grand idea of what you're working towards, but everything seems to be working against you. And no matter how hard you try and push past these obstacles, they just keep coming. So maybe something to do is not give up on that, but to step back and just see where the flow is going. Maybe there's a different direction you can take, but the only way you can do that is by stepping back and just sort of taking in what's around you. I think that's often why we get these shower ideas, because we're in the shower, we're not thinking of anything in particular necessarily, but those are often the times when we're doing nothing or when we're driving where we get these great ideas or a new perspective that we haven't thought of before. It's because maybe in those moments we've surrendered a little bit, whether we intended to or not. We've given ourselves that space, that pause, to let a new idea come in or a new perspective come in. I know for me, sometimes when I'm trying hard to control an outcome, I'm getting stressed and I'm getting worked up, and I can get a short fuse, and maybe other people don't see the short fuse, but I certainly feel it. I feel like I could snap at any moment. And that doesn't feel good, and it's really a sign that maybe I need to let go of that outcome or find a way for that outcome to still be successful while still enjoying the process. Because oftentimes in whatever we're doing, we forget to take the time to enjoy the present. So maybe if you're surrendering or letting go or going with the flow, you're more in the present, you're more in the now, rather than when you're focused on the outcome, trying to get control over whatever it is you're creating, or that dream, or that person, or that team, or that group. Or it's trickier to find a way to lead or be in the world where you can relax into the flow of things rather than trying to puppet master everything or micromanage everything, which is a trap I often fall into, and then I lose the magic of that moment. It definitely can be scary to give up that control or what you thought was control, because ultimately sometimes that controlling feeling, thinking that you're in control, is actually controlling you. It could be making you small. Oftentimes I might not do something because I'm so worried of the outcome that I'm trying to control where I'm at. So really, sometimes that control is actually controlling me. But it can definitely be scary to let go a little bit of the control that you think you have. It's a comfort zone, I think, for a lot of us to be in control. And when you're not in control, it's being in the present moment, letting that happen, checking in with yourself, and allowing the unknown to have some space. Because when we let go of control, we're inviting that unknown in. And the unknown, that chaos, is where we can grow. If you're having a time of chaos, there's two options. You can move forward, or you can retract and go backward. You can contract or expand into the unknown, and you have that choice. I find a good place to let go of control or practice surrendering is in my creative practice. When I'm feeling really worked up, I can come to the page or the canvas and make some very chaotic marks and not care about where it's coming from. Sometimes when I sit down at a blank page, I get that scary feeling of the unknown. I might have a vision in my mind of what I want to create, and I'm focused on that outcome, and everything I do would not be good enough. So sometimes it's a good practice to sit down on the page and just let curiosity and play take over, and let that line guide you or that color guide you, and let the outcome just be what it wants. It could be something beautiful, it could be a surprise, you might learn something new. It could turn out completely ugly, and that's okay too. Not everything has to work out the way that we planned. So I find that the creative practice is a good way and a safe space to practice that feeling of surrender. Because in reality, it's the same thing in real life. We might think that we have control of a situation, but it could have an entirely different, amazing outcome when we invite curiosity and the unknown into that. So in today's tutorial, we're going to be practicing surrendering. I'm going to be using and experimenting with some watercolors and inks, and we will see where that takes us. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial. And until next time, be inspired. Welcome to this week's tutorial. The purpose of this tutorial is to give you a chance to explore and experiment with watercolors and be able to surrender to whatever happens on the page. I'm going to be experimenting with watercolors and inks on different types of papers, as well as salt and rubbing alcohol, just to see what effects I can get and practice giving up some control. I'm choosing to tape my watercolor paper down, one so that they don't curl and buckle on me. The other is to have some crisp edges when I'm finished. And then I'm just using my pencil on a couple and drawing in some loose shapes. So I've got some hearts and a little vine. Now it's time to play. In the first quadrant, I'm doing a wet on wet technique. So I'm putting clean water on the paper and then dropping the color in. Now remember, we're trying to let go of control and surrender here. So I'm not thinking too much about where I'm putting the color, and then I'm splattering it on as well. In the second one, the paper's dry, and I have my wet brush, and I'm just choosing colors and doing a loose line, not trying to create anything in particular. And then I'm dripping clean water onto that to see what effect that will get. In the third one, I'm doing a mix of the two, dry and wet. I'm avoiding the hearts, I'm splattering clean water on, I'm putting drips on it, and just really not focusing on controlling anything other than avoiding the hearts. Coming back to the second square now, I've put some clean water on it, and I'm putting more color on and lifting my cardboard to let it drip. And then that's just some salt. And the salt will create a pattern on there as it dries. Coming into the bottom block, I'm using yellow and red, two colors that I don't use very often. And I'm letting them blend together, again going past my sketches that I did. In the third one, or the last one, I'm just sort of playing around again with colors. I usually don't put purples and brown or purples and yellows too close together because they can make brown, but I'm just sort of letting them be there right now. This is rubbing alcohol, and I'm just using a old brush and dropping it in, and you can see the paint is sort of being repelled by it, which is kind of neat. While those ones are drying, I'm moving on to a different paper and using, this is just a dinner plate as my palette, and sketch pad paper isn't really made for watercolors, so it's more absorbent. It's going to get the color on there faster with less time to move it around. You'll also see that it buckles and will pill a little bit, but it's still fun to play on and experiment and to see what effects you can get without taking yourself too seriously. Remember that the purpose of these projects are just to play. So use whatever you have. Maybe you have some loose leaf. Experiment with whatever materials you have and let it be curious. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be beautiful. It's just to play. Imagine you're a 5-year-old and trying these out for the first time. And just let yourself go. This paper is called Duralar, and as you can see, it's transparent. I've put it on top of some white paper so I can see a little more clearly what I'm doing. Sketching out a little fox. It's a very plasticky paper. I'm trying to still figure out what the best use is for it. For this one, I'm using some ink, some dilutions and tie-dyes, as well as watercolors. And this one, because of the type of paper that it is, I really have to let go of control because the water just repels on it, as you'll see in a second. And when you paint, you can swirl it, and when you splatter the clean water on, it reactivates, so you get this kind of spattered effect. Now that these ones have had some time to dry, I'm coming back in with another layer. This is the watercolor paper again, and I'm not working in any particular order. I am letting that one with salt dry a little longer because it had quite a bit of water on it. And I'm just playing again, putting the same colors on top, using thin layers, trying out different colors on top, different yellows or different shades of the same color, lines, dots, speckles.
I'm playing with the greens over top. I'm using my brush to make lines. At this point, I have taken the salt off that paper. Once it was dry, you're able to use your fingers and rub it off in a circular motion. I'm still playing with splatters. I'm adding some purples in that bottom one, some pinks from the inks, darkening others. Really just to practice in exploring. Now I'm back to my fox on that plastic transparent paper, adding some darks, and I'm learning that as soon as I touch it with my brush, it reactivates everything behind it. But I start to play with that a bit more, because I can create little puddles and swirl the colors together, which is kind of neat. It makes it look sort of like a cosmos. And then when you sprinkle the clean water on again, it reactivates and you get that little speckle. Now I'm back to the regular watercolor paper. And again, I'm just playing with layers, putting little drops here and there, little lines here and there. And then I'm going to add some final details with some gold ink. Filling in my hearts and leaves, putting in little dots and little patterns and splatters. Adding clean water to some of those to let them spread out and let up control. And then I'm ready to take off the tape. I love taking off the tape and seeing the white edges next to it. I'm using my pencil to do a little bit of outlining, bring those hearts back. Touching up with some gold. Adding some dots, just letting it be. Then I take the white and I splatter some white in there. It didn't really do very much. So instead I took the gold and outlined my fox. And now that the pieces are all dry, I felt like they needed just one more little thing to wrap them up. These are a bunch of words that I have just cut up randomly, and I pull them out from time to time when I feel like something needs just a little more. And so the last thing that I do is I find a word or a set of words for each one of the pieces, and I arrange them on the page and glue them down. You could also handwrite your words or phrase or use stamps. I hope that you enjoyed this creative practice today as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. I hope that you were able to take some time to just let go of the control and play and experiment and learn something from it. I know that the tutorials seem to jump around a lot. I debated on whether or not I should cut and piece it together so that all the projects were together. Like the fox one was all together and the little pieces are all together. But often this is how I work. I have all the pieces on the go, and while another one's drying, I'm working on something else and letting each one inform each other. You know, and one thing that I always find is when I go back and look at it, I can see colors that I might not have normally mixed together, or patterns and stuff that I didn't know would happen when I do certain things, like the splattering of clean water on that plastic paper, or the rubbing alcohol, how it repelled the paint. So I usually like to take little notes on the back, or sometimes I even circle it right in the front of color mixes that I really liked, and I try to write it down. I always think that I'm going to remember the colors that I used, but I go back and I think, I don't know how I created that. So it's good that if you find something that you like or don't like, that you write on the back the colors that you use, so you know to do it again or not to do it again. So again, I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, be inspired.